You're sitting alone, not in loneliness, but in reflection. The room is quiet, but your thoughts are loud. You haven't heard from her in days. No message, no call, no trace. And yet, something deep inside tells you she's thinking about you. Not in a passing moment, not in a fleeting way, but in that quiet, stubborn way that lingers long after pride has taken the wheel. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't scream rejection. It hums with unfinished business. You can feel it. She's out there living her life, and yet, somehow, the absence between you two has a pulse of its own. You wonder, does she miss me? And even more haunting, if she does, why won't she say it? This is where most men spiral, where doubt turns into chasing, where emotion demands action. But this is where the Stoic man stands still, because he knows something most don't, that silence isn't always an answer. Sometimes it's a question. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Her silence? That's outside of you, but your response to it? That's where your power lives. So, before you type that message, before you second-guess your worth, pause. Because this moment isn't about what she's thinking, it's about who you are becoming in the quiet. This is not just a story of her pride, it's a story of your poise, a lesson in restraint, a test of your depth. And if you stay with me, we're going to unpack not just why she's silent, but why your stillness may be the very thing she remembers most. Where emotions clash with ego. There comes a moment in every dynamic, whether romantic, personal, or somewhere in between, when the silence gets loud. You start to feel it before you ever see it. The response times grow slower, the conversations lose their rhythm, and though no words are spoken, something inside you whispers, "She's pulling away." It's in this quiet shift that a powerful conflict begins, not between you and her, but within her. She feels something, maybe more than she expected, maybe more than she's comfortable with, but instead of leaning into that feeling, she retreats. Not because the feeling isn't real, but because pride has stepped in. And now what once felt effortless has become a battlefield between her emotion and her ego. You see, for many women, especially those who've been hurt, betrayed, or taken for granted before, vulnerability feels like surrender. Reaching out first feels like losing. There's a deep-rooted fear. If I show him I care, will he use that against me? Will he pull away the moment I open up? So rather than risk being seen as weak, she puts on the armor of silence. She tells herself, if he cares, he'll come to me, and the distance grows. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Her heart still feels. She still checks her phone, still rereads the last message, still wonders what you're thinking. Yet her pride convinces her to do nothing, to wait, to hold the line, to stay still even as her emotions churn beneath the surface. This is the turning point, not just in her journey, but in yours. Because how you respond here determines everything. Most men make the mistake of reacting. They reach out too quickly, trying to fix the silence with words. Others retaliate, shutting down in return. But neither approach brings clarity. It only deepens the fog. The Stoic path offers something different. It teaches you to step back, not out of indifference, but out of strength. To recognize that her silence isn't a rejection, it's resistance. And you don't need to overpower it. You don't need to rush in to rescue her from the tension she created. You simply hold your ground with calm, quiet presence. Because the truth is, when a woman feels something real but won't admit it, she's waiting for one thing: a man who won't be swayed by the storm. Not a man who tries to prove his worth, not a man who needs constant validation, but a man who lives with purpose, who doesn't crumble when faced with confusion or mixed signals, a man who respects both her silence and his own inner peace. This is the moment she starts to question. The silence she once used to protect herself starts to turn inward, and when you remain centered, when you respond not with desperation but with grounded detachment, she begins to feel the gravity of your absence, not because you disappeared, but because you refuse to chase what cannot be forced. And that realization? That's what begins to shift everything. When her emotions finally overpower her ego, when she sees that you are still you, steadfast, composed, unbothered, that's when the silence breaks. But not by demand, not by pressure, simply by presence. And that leads us into something deeper, into the kind of connection that doesn't come from pursuit, but from poise, from strength, from stillness. Let's go there next. 5. Stoic perspectives on her silence. Number 1. Her silence is not always a rejection. Sometimes it's her struggle. To a Stoic, not everything that appears cold is hostile. Sometimes silence is simply the sound of a battle within. When a woman grows distant, our instincts may jump to conclusions. She's lost interest, she's moved on, or worse, I was never enough. But pause. A Stoic man doesn't rush to judgment. He considers that what appears to be rejection may in truth be restraint. She may be torn between her desire and her pride, between reaching out and holding on to her image of strength. Her silence, then, may be less about you and more about the cage she's built around her own heart. Number 2. What you don't say says everything about you. In an age of oversharing, restraint is power. When you don't chase after silence, when you don't fill the void with desperate messages or passive-aggressive questions, you show her something rare, that you are centered, that you are not ruled by impulse or fear of loss. Stoicism teaches that we don't beg for external validation because we already possess the internal compass that tells us who we are. When you allow silence to simply be what it is, without trying to force an outcome, you show her what real masculinity feels like. You become the stillness in a world of noise. Number 3. Emotions come and go, but character remains. One of the most powerful Stoic reminders is this: don't let your emotions rule you. Let your character guide you. When a woman pulls back, when the warm texts fade into cold pauses, you will be tempted to react, to defend your ego, to prove your worth. But a man who's walked through fire doesn't flinch at silence. He knows that this is when his character is measured, not by what he says to her, but by how he treats himself in the quiet moments. Stay grounded, live well, carry yourself like a man who is not afraid of emotional weather, because he's already built his house on bedrock. Number 4. You do not need to be heard to be felt. This is perhaps the most subtle truth of all. When a Stoic man is silent, he is not invisible, he is unforgettable, because the way you carry yourself during her silence echoes louder than any message you could send. Your calm, your focus, your refusal to chase, your dedication to your own life, these things linger. And here's what most don't realize: silence can create longing. When she sees you thriving, not in arrogance but in quiet strength, she begins to question her distance, not because you forced her to, but because you reminded her of the gravity of your presence. Number 5. If she comes back, welcome her without bitterness. Stoicism is not coldness, it's clarity. If she reaches out again, don't punish her. Don't gloat or withdraw as payback. Respond with warmth but not neediness, openness but not dependence, because the goal isn't to win a power game, it's to live in alignment with your values. Forgiveness, presence, and strength can coexist. She will respect you not for the silence you held, but for the grace you bring when it ends. Each of these 5 truths is not just a tactic, it's a way of living, of reclaiming your peace, of stepping fully into a version of yourself that doesn't just attract love, but commands respect. And when a man carries himself with that kind of quiet force, he doesn't chase affection. He becomes the kind of man it naturally returns to. She may forget what you said. She may even forget how often you reached out. But what she won't forget, what stays with her long after the silence, is how you remained still, grounded, steady, unmoved by the chaos of mixed signals or emotional storms. That, my friend, is the presence of a man who has mastered himself. And that presence is unforgettable. Because in a world where most men chase validation, where attention is given too quickly and withdrawn just as fast, the Stoic man stands apart. He doesn't rush to fill silence with noise. He doesn't beg for clarity. He doesn't try to prove his worth to someone who hasn't yet earned the right to see his depth. He lives by principle, not by impulse. And that kind of calm, that kind of quiet power, leaves a deeper impression than any carefully crafted text ever could. So, what should you take from all this? That you don't need to react to be seen, you don't need to chase to be remembered, and you don't need to fix what was never broken in the first place. When a woman thinks about you but holds back because of pride, the answer isn't to chase her out of that silence. It's to become the kind of man who makes her rethink why she ever held back at all. Let your presence be the answer. Let your stillness speak louder than words. And most importantly, let your life be so full, so intentional, so quietly powerful, that she can't help but feel the absence when you're not there. If this resonated with you, if you've been in this place of silence and strength, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What did you learn from the moments you didn't react? What did you gain when you chose stillness over struggle? And if you're ready to keep walking the Stoic path with me, to keep mastering yourself not for others but for your own peace, then subscribe to Ultimate Stoicism. This is just the beginning. There's so much more to learn, to unlearn, and to embody. Because stillness isn't weakness, it's what she'll remember most, and maybe it's what will bring her back.